What's happening to America? 50 years ago, my 4 years there, I was under Eisenhower, and obviously that was probably one of the the best and most prosperous years of Eisenhower. I remember the big GM cars and the refrigerators and the TVs and refrigerators, whatever it is. America things were the best. And yet somehow 50 odd years later, it seems to be that when a country was able to produce a Liberty ship in 3 or 4 days, and yet you don't have a shipyard anymore to build anything on. When General Motors, Charlie Wilson said what was good for General Motors is good for the United States, maybe he was prophetic, because look at what's happening to General Motors and look at America. So this trip, when you see China, now China has been a very poor country, but thanks to Deng Xiaoping 30 years ago, he said, well, we got to do some changes and undergo reform. And in the process, 30 years later, the Chinese farmers has never had it so good, because throughout the history of China has never been able to earn as much money. And Wen Jiabao also helped them. That 3 years ago, he waived all the taxation on farmers. This is one way of redistribution of wealth. So the whole country now is earning maybe 2,000 something US dollars a year, which by US standards is still below the poverty line. But in China, where people are earning $2,000, they're able to live reasonably well. At least you don't see any beggars, you don't see people starve to death, which is quite something. 1.3 billion people, whereas 30 years ago they hardly earned anything, and it was abject poverty. And yet, with something defined by America as below the poverty line, I think it's $4,000 or something in America is called the poverty line. Somehow something is going wrong. Why is that these people can make do with 2,000 odd, and yet in America they can't do it? So I think the political system, the economic system, I don't know what has gone wrong, but something is going wrong. And I certainly hope that in future there are some bright people, and there are a lot of bright people in America. Unfortunately, you don't always put those bright people to work or allow them to work. America is a nice country because we believe, we have shown in history in America that we've been very nice to everyone. When Europe had its trouble with Adolf Hitler, afterwards there was a Marshall Plan. And when Japan, despite of the fact they did a sneak attack on Pearl Harbor, and look at what MacArthur and the scholars that helped the Japanese industries prosper and make Japan with such prosperity. So this is the kind of message that you want to go out and tell people, and you got the credibility because you have done it. But rather than just say there, either you're with me or against me. After all, George W. Bush is not running a mafioso. No, it isn't. You're running a country. You're representing a country of a really great heritage and also great generosity. Look at how many foreign students you have trained all over the world and sent them back and no questions asked. So I don't know how this can do, but whatever it is, I sincerely hope that America has got to have this change. And I was having great hopes when Obama said, change. I didn't ask for change from bad to worse, or just keep changing. I think this is important. So you write to your congressman and say, well, we must do something and do something right. I think the best thing is to talk and negotiate with everybody, so that you can enlist some of the help of the more moderate Muslims, the more moderate Buddhists, Confucius, whatever. It doesn't matter. And say, well, we want genuine peace and not war. I also want to tell you a little story which I heard direct from the horse's mouth about 10 years ago. It's about Deng Xiaoping, the meeting of Deng Xiaoping and Lee Kuan Yew. As Lee Kuan Yew said that Deng Xiaoping in the 20s went to studied and worked in France. And he passed by Singapore by boat. He got up, saw Singapore what it was, and then after he got into power, there was a visit to Thailand and Singapore, and Lee Kuan Yew treated him for lunch. And during lunch, Deng Xiaoping said a nice thing. He said, look, Singapore, I was here in the 20s, it was very poor, now you have done a tremendous job. And Lee Kuan Yew never means his words. He said, you should and you could have done better. And he said, why? Well, he said, you represent the mandarins, his except was mandarins, where you have the land, you have the resources, and look at the mess that China is. We, or our grandfathers, our forefathers, find it difficult to make a living. We came out here to this foreign place and look at what we have done. You should have done better, you could have done better. And Deng Xiaoping never said a word. At the end of the lunch, Lee Kuan Yew asked Deng Xiaoping for a favor. Can you stop exporting communism? Now at that time, the Mao faction in China was still supporting the Malaysian Chinese, so that hopefully to tear down the government of Malaysia. And Deng Xiaoping was equally candid. He said, at this point I can't do it. Give me 6 months. And certainly enough, 6 months later, the head of the communist Malaysian communist guy surrendered himself and said, we are not going to have any more insurgents. So this, you know, this kind of people are the people that make the second half of the 20th century very relevant and important. Now, in about 2 weeks' time, I'm the chairman of the committee that hosts the, what was that one? Woodrow Wilson Institute, which came to Hong Kong to honor 2 people. One is Chief Justice Lee here, and the other one is from Woking, Victor Fong, Dr. Victor Fong. For one is on keeping the government service, and the other one is being an international corporate leader. And I was asked to be the chairman to officiate that. And I said, well, I don't want to be in the limelight or anything. This is hard work. But anyway, I was forced to do it, and I do it for one reason. Because Kissinger is also coming, and he's going to give a speech commenting on the U.S. and Chinese relationship at this point in time. Now, I remember Kissinger was so important. In 1971, he was visiting Pakistan. And when he got there, he said he was sick. But secretly, he flew to Beijing, had a private meeting with Chow and I, and the two worked out the détente. Now, this talking and the result was that Nixon visited Beijing, and Mao Zedong shook his hand, and the rest was history in the sense that with the softening up of the warming up of the Chinese-U.S. relationship, and later on paved the way for the open door policy, and you see all this prosperity. You see, talking is always better than just whip your gun out and start shooting. This is not the way. So So I think I've said enough, but just something. The last bit I want to say is that don't worry about Hong Kong. With Hong Kong, we have 50 years of complete high degree of autonomy. We don't pay any taxes to Beijing. They pick up the expenses of defense. But the biggest worry now is we are going to have universal suffrage. Hopefully not too quickly, but when they do, what's going to happen is there are 60 seats on the council. And when you get 60 do-gooders on the council, then we're going to have free lunch, free dinner, free breakfast, and everything is free. Then at the end of the day, it's like California. Who the hell is going to pay for it?